Greetings, salutations, and a curse of good fortune upon you. Hi, I am Tri, and I'm here to talk to you about what is important to me today. Sorry, typo negative joke. If you've ever seen After Dark, it's been less than a week for me. I'm here to talk to you about something fairly important to your internet experience, the router. Normally, most people get the internet provider one, which is essentially like your workplace IT group handing you the cheapest wireless keyboard, mouse, headset, peripherals. It's good enough to get the job done. If you want better, you buy it yourself. In most cases, what you get is the standard router plus Wi-Fi. Why am I making this distinction? Is that most people call their router their Wi-Fi, but realize that is kind of like saying all medical adhesive strips are Band-Aids. That's a brand. It's not what the actual are. It's what we've come to accept the term as. A router basically just takes your signal that comes in from your modem, splits it so that more than one computer can use it. Usually you get four or, yeah, usually about 4 or 5 ports, one being the in, four being to everybody else. Now, what you tend to get with your internet provider is you're lucky sometimes to even get four. Sometimes you get one. Or they would just rely on you to have the Wi-Fi part. Kind of a okay thing if you have like a general layout where everybody can reach it, not that many walls in between. Good to go. Now, another option. Here's that router plus Wi-Fi. This is for me, I think it was a cheap one at the time, but when my mother-in-law moved into her place, she had the cable provided, but she wanted something that she controlled because that's one perk of buying your own. You control it, you own it. So, this is the router. Actually, I think this is actually the router from that example. You have ports here that are 1 gigabit each, 1 billion bits of data going through. Divide by 8 to get the megabit rate, which is some companies like to round it to 10. So they'll say it's like a 10 megabit or 100 megabit. But just know you want to go with the gigabit rating because that's your more accurate. This is the speeds that your provider will also be giving you as your subscription. It's not actually bought. You don't own the actual connection there. Nothing we can do about that. Pros of going with like your internet provider is, hey, it's a cheap rental. You get, when the guy comes to install it, the option is it's right there. You don't have to fuss with it. Fairly simple. Cons, kind of obvious. They own it. So you don't have as much say as you think about how you control it. I've seen with Charter or Spectrum, whichever you want to call it, you have to have a online account to do the settings of your router. Kind of creepy, but okay. You have the physical device there. One of the computers could just log in. Yeah. We won't touch that one any further. Pros of your store bought. Obviously, you do what you want with it because it is yours. You've set it up, you run it the way you want, or well, within the limitations of the software and hardware, you run it the way you want. You tend to be able to range from like there's cheap ones that are like $25 that you can get off of say Amazon, AliExpress, eBay, local yard sale when somebody's getting rid of one, uh, stuff like that. Um, there's the downside also of they tend to be a little bit more expensive because you can get them up to I've seen them up to $300 or $400. They'll look like a dead crab, like this sort of thing, where you've got the antenna sticking up each way. Excellent signal the more you pay, but not everybody has the money that much to spend. Keep in mind, there is a misconception that you have to have the best out there so that you get the fastest signal and whatnot. Realize there's still one connection going in, coming from your internet provider, which in my case is 400 megabits up and down. Thank you. So no connection talking to the internet can be faster than that. So 1 gigabit is actually faster, and you're not likely to saturate that easily. Now, if you have multiple sessions trying, then okay, you may actually do that. I've done it many times. Another con is if you're like me, who is an oddball power user, you will have a funeral for this in 3 months. I don't know why. I've had many routers over the years. Even ones that were just wired would only last me 3 months. But that's because they put in the same kind of hardware in here. That would be like the standard Chromebook or something like that. It's the lowest power so that you're not running a lot of power, but it's good enough to get the job done. Again, now there's a third option, which is the home built. This is where, say, you have a random computer that you no longer use. It has an Ethernet port on the back. You also have a card, another Ethernet card, or you just happen to have a motherboard that has two of these ports. You don't need the card. So you build a little router box. This is ideal. Like, hey, it's recycling. You don't have to worry about the e-waste. These tend to be a whole lot more reliable, stable, sometimes more than the people that built them. I'm fine. And, well, you get what you want. You don't have to add anything else. This is truly yours. You built it yourself. It is yours. They can't say anything else about it. But you do run into a series of new problems because a lot of the software out there seems to die off after a couple of years. or they get bought by other companies. Examples, when I started building my own router, there was software called Smoothwall. It was great router software. It did everything I needed, no extra bells and whistles. Gave me a bandwidth monitor, which was a wonderful thing when when I was on a capped internet. However, the updates came slower and slower and slower. So eventually I switched over to IPCOP, which was actually, it was a branch off of Smoothwall. It used some of the same underlying software. It gave me newer features, like I was allowed to shape the traffic on my end. Say, because back then I was still living at home. I had two brothers and they were misbehaving. Parents would come to me and say, hey, we've got to punish them, and I could reduce their speeds, which seemed to work better than yelling at them. Go a bit further on. IPCOP has not been updated in probably at least 10 or so years. At least not that I remember seeing. And so I switched over to something called PFSense. Well, PFSense got acquired by a company named Netgate, and they decided to go to a subscription model. I'm still running a PFSense box over in the rig behind me. Now, admittedly, the subscription for like the lowest tier is you just get the software is free. I'm still using the version before that, which has not received updates in probably a year or so. So you get to the point where I'm working at in the background. This will actually be my version 7 router, which is how many iterations I've gone. The upside to doing this is I'm using industrial grade hardware. I'm actually using a server board on the inside. I have a Intel Xeon processor from it would be the fourth generation. So you would know it as like the i7-47 something or other, but it's the Xeon of that era. Another perk, sitting on, where? There we go. Gotta remember my camera's facing the other way. See the two colors? This is the downside of doing this, is I haven't quite figured out how to use the other ports. But the red will be 10 gig in. The green is 10 gig to the network. This is more than just overkill. It's tough. Yes, I'm sure you saw the sticker, and I'm sure you're rolling your eyes at me. This is in a 2U case, which, if you're looking at the size, you'll notice it is rack mountable, 2 units high, thus 2U case. I'm putting it down because my lap is getting sore. Now, from this, you end up with a series of new challenges. You built it, you maintain it, you are your own IT. There's no company, there's no real service. However, there's an online community to which there are PDFs, there's the FAQ, famous Ask Questions. You can go online and type in PFSense VLAN, PFSense DHCP list, PFSense, yada, 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 whatever. And usually you can find documentation. But you have to do it yourself or know somebody who's willing to do it. The reason that one's sitting down there is I still have to figure out the VLAN thing, so that may be a later episode, possibly. There are other challenges. First and foremost, that has no Wi-Fi. pfSense and OpenSense do not have drivers for Wi-Fi cards. Or if they do, they're very obscure. I haven't come across them yet. So, if you're all wired, you're perfect. If you're not, then you still need what's called a wireless access point. This is one of the things that the router plus Wi-Fi adds in. I kind of like the idea of going a UFO, sorry, wrong way again, UFO or smoke detector. There is a small challenge of running these, is that if you see this, I've got some heat discoloration. The sucker heats up, so it's good to turn it off every now and again, just to prolong the life. This has been swapped out. I have newer ones. This one, on the other hand, Ubiquity, is a wonderful company. It is your enterprise without licensing. Problem is that you have to buy a controller, i.e. a cloud key or something like that, or you could build one with a virtual machine. I'm not getting into that because I never successfully did it. However, I own a cloud key, so I got a bunch of these. Next is to realize there are different speeds or categories. There's your Wi-Fi 4 or 802.11n, which seems to cap out around 600 megabits per second. It's really great till you got multiple users on. You go Wi-Fi 5, and they seem to double the maximum on that one to where you're about 1300. Some of them go up to 1750. You go up to Wi-Fi 6, also known as AX, and you get into the ludicrous numbers like 5400.
But that's done through multiple channels, so you probably get like 2400
on a channel and another channel of 2400 or something like that. I know my math just went wrong, but you get the idea from this. Another issue is you need a way of connecting all of those into that. So how's that concept for a switch? Yes, another bad joke. This here is an Ethernet switch. It takes, well, this is a 5-port, meaning you go 1 in, 4 out. Doesn't matter which one's the in, they actually all function equally. But it shares the connection. And so that green port would go to one of these. And then this would also branch off to the access points. You can also get what's called PoE, which means this here would actually provide power over, well, it's power over Ethernet, which is a wonderful concept. If you follow someone like Wendell from Level 1 Techs, he's to the moon over the concept. Fair point, so am I. It's just I can't get that high. Now, I will admit, I like the idea of avoiding e-waste. So, over the years, I have built routers over things I've had. However, there is the inevitable. I had a friend once that during a lightning storm, it hit the router. and took everything on it because you just can't defend against a proper lightning strike. You can get surge protection, but there's still occasionally that chance it'll go bleep and over. Lightning is lightning, electricity is electricity, and trust me, it can hurt. That's when you learn the difference between megahertz and kilohertz, and they're in the wrong order. Now, as I've said before, there's advantages, there's disadvantages. Being your own tech support, you don't have to have like the rack mountable case. I'm just a nut that managed to inherit one, like a nice U36 rack from a workplace because I was working at the right place at the right time when they were giving it away. Let's just say trying to get that home in a Dodge Grand Caravan was creative, especially when I forgot you could take the side panels off. So trying to figure out how I got down the highway. Outside of that, what you decide is what you decide. That is the most important thing you have to remember. Don't let your cable provider talk you into something if you don't trust their security. Think of how many like companies have had information leaks. So X amount of people had their usernames and passwords leaked out to the internet, sold on the black market. Okay. But at the same time, some of them may not have been one of those companies. They may have a decent router that's good enough at the time. You can also use devices like the access points to extend your wireless. You run a line from your router and you set your access point in a spot where you're getting miserable coverage. It's an idea to have one. My Hawkins, actually, for a long time, was one of those where it extended. And so instead of where you have one signal shared amongst a cluster of computers, you now have two signals shared. This leads into having different speeds of access points off of one of those routers. I use 2Ubiquity AP or Wi-Fi 5. I use this for like the lower traffic, cell phones, game devices, stuff like that. Stuff that won't take away, that don't need like a high bandwidth. Okay, game devices, probably a little bit more. You put those on the 5 gig, they get extra speed. You put them on the 2.4 gig for the phones when you're just doing your doom scrolling, your email, the damn thing went off and told you that somebody's at the door or something because you have your Amazon Ring doorbell or something hooked into it. Good enough. You put that on the 2.4 so it doesn't clutter up. Now, I go a step further. I have two ingenious Wi-Fi 6 access points for the gaming computers so that they get a unrestricted and like the lower tier. I hate to say lower tier because it sounds like he's being classist or something, elitist. Well, okay, when it comes to devices, yes, I am. I'm sorry. It happens. Lower priority devices, higher priority devices. You're playing your game, that's a higher priority device. You're watching YouTube, that's a lower priority. If you have any questions on that, hopefully I can point you to forums, or I might be able to answer them in a later video. Put your questions down below. If there's something I said that went right over your head, if it took the hat with it, let me know. That's an old joke that it's an old joke that my mother used to say whenever I was talking tech. She'd put a hat on because when it went over, she didn't want a bald spot. As I was saying, right, leadership. No, I may be Canadian. I'm not Canadian. Okay. Routers. They're important. Don't get tricked into you have to have the best. Live within your budget. I looked in my wallet today. A spider waved back at me. Friendly little guy. I'm kind of worried about him, but it's a nice, spacious place at this point. If you like the content I'm doing, give a thumbs up. I'm so new at this. Subscribe if you want to. I'm not going to force you to. I'm Canadian. I don't believe in gunpoint to get you to subscribe, but it would help. I'm hoping to maybe one day do this as a business so that I don't have to worry about being IT help desk. I can actually do this stuff on my own. Maybe the stuff that I do here in the house will continue, but otherwise, as I see I am slowly creeping up on a half hour, fairly well.